Good morning, everyone. I will try to speak slowly, but usually I'm French, I'm speaking too fast, so I apologize for that in advance, particularly for the translator. I'm principal analyst at Forrester. I joined Forrester 17 years ago, and previously I was already enterprise architect. I discovered the enterprise architect during the first training that John Zachman, I do not know if you know John Zachman, but he's a pop of, he created the enterprise architect world in US. So I participated to that first training in Washington, DC, that was in 1997, so 20 years ago. Now I want to talk about, during that presentation, about the evolution of enterprise architecture. It's not the same that we have seen previously. And what is interesting is it will accompany a lot the transformation of enterprise, particularly now that we are adopting more and more digital transformation. In my presentation, I want to talk about some of the drivers which are transforming enterprise architecture. Then I will talk about what is digital transformation, and how enterprise architecture itself is transforming. And then I will introduce also a new phenomena that we are detecting at Forrester that we think is a post-digital transformation, meaning we are entering into digital transformation. We have probably for 5 to 10 years to make that transformation for enterprise. And in fact, it's not the end. We are already predicting what will be the next thing which will happen in the enterprise. We are calling that values transformation. And I will introduce that concept. Why? Because we think at Forrester that we will not succeed for digital transformation if we are not also taking into account what customers want. We introduced at Forrester 7 years ago the age of the customer, the era of customers, where customers are getting more and more power. Citizens are getting more and more power also. And in fact, we think that we are getting into the second stage of that transformation. That's what we are calling the values transformation. So we introduced 10 years ago a sort of classification of the different enterprise architects, because we are seeing different types of enterprise architecture, depending on where they sit, where they are focusing and providing the best value. So in general transformation, the enterprise architects are using business and IT objectives to transform and execute those objectives into the enterprise through the IT. To do that, the enterprise architect can focus more on project or more on strategy, or they can focus more on technology or more on business. And that creates 4 types of typical enterprise architects. And obviously, the enterprise architecture, if it started first at the beginning of 2000 years on technology project, in reality, that moved to more strategy, then more business, and now more on the business strategy aspect. And obviously, the digital transformation, as it's moving more and more to transform the business, obviously, the enterprise architecture is also helping a lot to move that way and introduce more on the business strategy side. But I will show you now how that business strategy focused enterprise architect is providing more and more value and providing also new practices. It's not just about collecting artifacts, but it's really to provide more business outcomes. So the drivers are the business is becoming more complex and requires to adapt, to continuously innovate, to become more agile, and obviously with avoiding the risks. So the difficulty about that is we are getting more and more difficulties to get a clear strategy from the decision makers. In general, the business do not know what does that mean, the digital transformation for them. They have some feeling, but they are continuously adapting, continuously changing, continuously evolving themselves. So it's more and more difficult for enterprise architects to collect the requirements, to collect clear requirements, as it has been described by TOGAF. TOGAF is one of those frameworks which is establishing the methodology for the enterprise architect. Unfortunately, that TOGAF is very good for some of the IT, but not in that aspect when the strategy itself is continuously evolving to adapt to customers. So digital is now everywhere. That means that IT is in robots, in machines, in every interaction with customers through website, through mobile app. So it's more and more difficult, in fact, to avoid IT. And obviously that's also increasing the risk about your reputation, the risk about not getting the right technology at the right time, the right innovation also at the right time for the business. So the IT choices and operations are more impacting the business than ever. And what does that mean? That means that the planning directions are continuously evolving and more difficult to get. So that's why the business or the practice of enterprise architects themselves is evolving. So what we have seen is if enterprise architect, I would say 5 years ago, was mainly inside out, now we should take into account what is the outside in, how to take into account the continuous evolution of customers, continuous evolution of the digital strategy. It was more technology focused. We should move to be more business oriented. It was about producing artifacts. In reality now it should satisfy stakeholders. And again, more stakeholders and more decision makers than previously. It was more project-driven previously. It should be more strategy-driven. It was mainly about standardization, but that was mainly for standardizing CRM or ERP with a one-size-fits-all approach. While now we should get more and more marketing technologies, marketing and system of insight technologies. So it should bring new innovation and continuous innovation as part of the new choices. Finally, he was focusing mainly on cost. Now we should focus not only just on effectiveness, but also to bring more agility to the business. It's hard. It's a complete transformation of the enterprise architecture as compared to what we have seen 20 years ago, when I began to use enterprise architecture to help telcos and pharma and many other of those type of business. On the agility bandwagon, we did some transformation of the IT already by grouping together the development plus the operations. And we have got some DevOps to get some practices to help them to get agility, better efficiency from agility by grouping dev and ops. The problem is enterprise architects are a little bit out of this DevOps approach. So there is another framework I encourage you to take a look at, which is SAFe. This is a framework which is bringing agility and architecture as part of the agility and extending the agility to the architecture as well. In addition to that, we think that to really bring agility, we should also change the PMO, the project management office. That means what? Previously, the project management office was mainly top-down. So that means that the executive and strategists were doing the strategy and then brought the different type of project and that sort of thing in a sort of top-down to enterprise architect, to PMO, and to execution. We are continuously, by developing agile project, we are continuously discovering that we should change something, discover a new API in the back office, in the system of records. What does that mean? That means that all of those guys should work together into something that we are talking about collaborative And what they should deliver is now a roadmap which will unify and in one single roadmap all those elements which are about what are the timeline for the business, what is the architecture investment that we should bring, and based on that we should build a portfolio, and based on that we should also get the right feedback from projects which are producing not only application but really product and service. This is a complete shift for IT. We should not manage any more application. We should not manage any more project. We should manage a roadmap, and we should manage product and service. Direct product out of our application. It's a complete shift compared to what we have done previously. So for the moment, for example, for the operational side of IT, we are still using ITIL. And ITIL is not good to deliver product. It's good to deliver application. This is a shift that we should manage also, the change of ITIL, the change of TOGAF, the change of all our practices that we are using today to really move to manage really product, service, and a complete roadmap and a unified roadmap that all of those people should work with. This is a big shift. It will take probably 10 to 15 to 20 years to get that shift. And obviously, the enterprise architect should participate to help also the IT to make that shift. Some of the digital transformation evolution. You have probably heard from many consulting companies that the digital transformation split into different elements, which are touching digital experience with the customer experience, touching also the digital operation, where we should get more and continue the productivity enhancements. We should get also more innovation on products and new service, new offerings. But the thing which is missing the most in all of those presentations, and that's where I will show you more and more about that, is about how the digital is completely changing the ecosystems. And that's probably the most important change and the most disruptive for all of you. I know that most of you are, some of you are coming from banks. And in fact, on banks in France, I have a new application which is called Linkso on my mobile, which is aggregating multiple banks accounts into one single bank account, like a single bank account. This is disintermediating completely the work of the banks today. Banks are now just a system of... I do not move enough. Sorry. Just to show how much the banks are completely disrupted by those new intermediaries. And I want to introduce some of those intermediaries into that. Why those intermediaries are coming? Previously, the typical supply chain that we have seen previously in many industries was the companies was at the center of that supply chain. That was a typical value chain of Porter with suppliers and raw materials, and then dealing to customers through retailers. What is changing is, in fact, the customers, which is in the green circle, is in fact establishing his own ecosystem. He's building his own application, so I do not move anymore my phone. Buying a new application, using a website, using a laptop to establish the right relationship. But those customers are looking for more values for themselves. They want to diminish the cost of their banks. They want to diminish and save energy rather than just buying energy. That's why they are using Nest, for example, the thermostat. So they are introducing in that case when the blue element is not providing the right service, the right value, they are introducing those intermediaries which are providing more value. Again, customers are continuously looking for new values, continuously looking for more values. That's why, in fact, we think that just focusing on customer experience is not enough. You should continuously check if you are really providing the right value to customers into their customer journey map. This is something which is completely changing the ecosystem. Sometimes we are hearing that the digital transformation, you should put the customer at the center. But all of you guys are thinking that you are all around the customer. It's completely false. So customers are building really their own ecosystem, looking continuously for new values, at the point that sometimes they are looking for new intermediaries, because those ones are not providing anymore the right value that customers are looking for. So this is one of the transformations that we think is the most important, and which is impacting, obviously, the architecture. The typical architecture that we built to support that value chain of Porter was to use ERP and service-oriented architecture to link the different systems that we built in the companies, systems like design, operations, and CRM. We should recognize that the systems today are expanding because of the IT, which is pervasive and which is developing in every zones of the enterprise. And we see a clear separation between system of record to system of engagement. So system of records are typically ERP, managing the maintenance and that sort of thing. But that's not the only one split. System of engagement are more about engaging with customers, employees, and partners. This is not the only one split. We should recognize also that in many industries we are getting a separation from system of record, what we are calling system of operation or system of automation. That's the robots, that's the plants, also systems that we are deploying to support the operations. In smart grid, for example, so the smart grid or the telco system is typically a system of operation. In manufacturers, we are seeing also a system of design, which is the CAD, CAM, PLM product, which are designing products. So very big difference compared to Gartner, which introduced the concept of multi-speed IT or the two-speed IT, is really, it's not a question of speed, it's a question of life cycle. So life cycle of products, in the case of a system of design, which is very different from a life cycle of system of record, which is pushed by Oracle or SAP or your provider of system of record. Your system of operation depends on how fast you will deploy the new smart meters for your smart grid, for example. Or if you are introducing, like in banks, for example, a beacon into your retail shop, that depends obviously on how fast you will deploy that beacon in all those retail banks. That's exactly how we should consider the system of operation with a very, very different life cycle. So yes, obviously for system of engagement, we need to be more agile. For system of operation, if it's a rail or a train system, obviously because there are different other risks, you should not be agile at all. It's even less agile than a system of record. So you see what I mean. In fact, what I try to convey with that is there are different life cycle for all of those systems and all those applications that you are deploying into those to really reflect the type of business and the life cycle of your own business and how you are moving fast or not on those different systems. To reflect that, we must recognize that each of those systems is getting a very different governance and a very different also way to justify the type of project. If we are using return on investment, typically for system of records, and the main goal is to diminish cost and continue to diminish cost, obviously, we must recognize that we have no way to justify any project in the system of engagement by using return on investment. So that's why to justify and get a business case for system of engagement, Forrester has introduced the concept of total economic impact, but it can be also net promoter score, net promoter value, some elements which are demonstrating that you are more in line with your customers. So again, it's very, very different in how you justify each of those investments by system of. The same also for system of automation. And if I take a look at typically in the energy industry, the system of automation is more about, and justifying the cost of project is more about getting the right CapEx versus OpEx, something that we have seen a lot in telco industry, for example. And in the case of a nuclear industry, safety is absolutely key. So this will be the first driver to make the choice and the investments in terms of digital transformation for this type of project and application and service. The same also for system of design. Again, perhaps the IT governance should be about creativity, and the business case will be by demonstrating that you are in advance and proposing a better product than your competitors. As a consequence, we should recognize that there is a typical enterprise architecture which is very different by system of. So that means that, for example, the EVA objectives to support the application for system of engagement, agility is the one driver compared to system of records, where simplicity is the one driver. And in that case, obviously, the principles are different. One size fits all for system of record, one ERP everywhere. But for system of engagement, you should take a look at more how you will integrate those different system of engagement. So the governance is different, the main deliverables are different as well. So that just to show you how much we should get a more adapted enterprise architecture, which will be very different from the different type of system that you will address. We called that before the digital transformation, architecting in zones. That just recognizing that we have probably very different systems, and we should get an adapted enterprise architecture for each of those systems. System of record versus system of engagement versus system of operation is not new. In the bank industry, you very well know the back office compared to the front office, compared to the middle office. So again, it's not a new classification, it's just recognizing that we should get probably a very different approach in terms of enterprise architecture, but also in terms of IT governance and IT objectives. Let's dig down a little bit more about what is the impact in terms of digital customer experience, one of the 4 quadrants for the digital transformation. So for the digital customer experience, we should create trusted machines. We should get and digitize products and services as part of the value ecosystem. You remember, we should deliver more and always more value for customers. And finally, we should digitize end-to-end customer experience. That would require, obviously, to produce new type of description, new type of artifacts for enterprise architects. For example, we should produce customer journey map. And that's what we collected as some of the examples of the new things that the enterprise architect should produce in that case. I will show you an example of customer journey map, but we should connect also customer journey map to processes through APIs. We should establish a digital platform. This is a huge subject now, meaning the enterprise architect should drive, even if they are not standardizing highly system of engagement, they should help and provide some guidance through establishing a digital platform. I talked about extending the agility from DevOps to solution architect using SAFe, and then extend the collaborative strategic planning. I talked a little bit about that. The next thing is to talk about how enterprise architects should bring digital operational excellence. And believe me, this is the most missing piece in terms of enterprise architect to support, the digital operational excellence. But before that, I want to show you how the customer journey map connects to the core processes. So let's take an example in the airplane, so the air transportation. So you have core processes like reservation, customer loyalty, flight system, baggage handling. All of those systems should connect in reality to the customer journey. So -2 days before embarking, you can get some book reservation, change reservation, request to upgrade. So what we are calling mobile moments, because they can be done through mobile, or they can be done also through website, or perhaps on the phone as well. So you have a different time, -2 days, -2 hours, that's the flight time, then after 2 hours after the flight occurred, and then after 2 days. And again, a customer journey should get all of those elements and try to find how to connect the check-in to the core processes without reflecting your own complexity within your own processes through those interactions on the mobile. This is how we should connect customer journey to core processes. The problem is we are now deploying more and more IoT, Internet of Things. We are connecting more sensors. We are connecting and perhaps also detecting where the customer is within the airport. Is he present or not in the airport lounge, for example? And perhaps that could connect to the customer loyalty and then offer some elements to help to check in automatically, for example, at the moment he's in the airport. And we are getting the same also from beacon within shops, some within the plane, and perhaps also some of the taxi. We must recognize that most of those will provide more and more information that we should aggregate in terms of events to really put into the context of processes or put into the context of customer journey. And that's by connecting those elements from the IoT to the process and to customer journey that we will really deploy and invent new services, invent also a new product. For example, if I want to provide a new value to be sure that all customers who purchase something into the shop get really their duty free before embarking to the plane, we should get that connection by knowing if that customers really purchase something. We could also offer some ground transportation at the exit of the airport by allowing him to book directly when he is landing. So that's a sort of new offering, new value that customers will continuously look for. Today, we are using Tripit, or we are using some of those intermediaries. But if the companies want to think more about offering new capabilities and new values, they should really think about how to connect the IoT elements to the core processes, to the customer journey to really deliver those new values. So the second element that I think is even more challenging for enterprise architects, and that's probably the typical enterprise architect who are the most difficult to get. Those are digital operational excellence architects. In my career of 35 years, I've only met 3 typical good architects doing that sort of digital operational excellence. It's a very rare resource to be able to analyze and understand how the IT operation is impedimenting to get the right business operations, is killing some of your good relationship with your customers. So we should be very careful to get those digital operational excellence and probably train some of the architects to really become digital operational excellence architects, to really bring agility and not just efficiency. It's not just on working on IT process that you will get the best operations, the best service to your customers. You should bring innovation, not just say no to everything. This is a big difference for some architects. And then if in case we are unable to provide that internally, we should be able to recognize that we should source externally in that case. So getting also from the architects the right way to source correctly, to source with the right ecosystem, again, not thinking anymore that you are the center of the ecosystem, but joining different ecosystems which could provide the right value to customers is one of the new responsibility for those architects. That requires to use more and more capability maps to help the sourcing decisions, again, to support that one. To extend through collaborative strategic planning, I showed you that previously. to get what we are calling target operating model. I will show you what does that mean, because again, you are getting from consulting companies a lot of operating models, but they are describing that very badly. I think that there is a simplified way to really describe the target operating model. There is no one agreement at the moment of what is an operating model. And finally, assess technology innovation risks to get the right innovation at the right time. This is not exhaustive, that list of actions that architects can provide. So let's take a look at the target operating model and what does that mean. If we want really to provide that reconciliation of IT processes plus OT processes, OT means operational technology, not anymore operational telecom, only in telecom. But that's exactly the same which happened in the telecom industry, when the telecom industry has got that transformation to the digital transformation. They started 10 years ago. But that's the same. We should bring now IT everywhere, but that means also that that IT brought into your product is becoming operational technology. And in that case, we should bring processes. So again, just working on Lean or Six Sigma, which are typical practices to optimize the processes, is not enough. Why? Because we should take into account application and technologies, and we should take into account the resources that all brought together into capabilities. And then all of those elements are delivering a service proposition. But that service proposition is just an inside-out view of what you are providing. What you should contrast that service proposition is to what customers want, what are their objectives. And that's by continuously checking that your service proposition is really fitting to customer objectives. And those customer objectives are coming from journeys, context, touch points, or mobile moments, what I was talking about previously. And that depends on the stakeholders and different type of persona, if I can say that. So all of those elements are providing an outside-in view. So that's by contrasting every time the efficiency, the risk reduction, to the values that you are providing to customers, that you will provide a better service, a better operating model. And that's by aligning those two things continuously that you will provide that alignment. Another element also, as part of that transformation, is in fact and part of the risk and how to manage the risk, which is about privacy management. You have probably heard about the General Data Protection Regulation coming from EU, and if you have some European customers in your companies, you should be in line with GDPR. This is one of the risks that we should manage. This is not easy. Why? Because in fact, to manage the GDPR, you should be very, very, very worrying about the American vendors, which are promising you that by just identifying automatically PII, personal identification information, you will get a complete GDPR. It's absolutely false. Be careful about that, because I see a lot of misinterpretation about that. Just getting PII does not fit you to GDPR. GDPR is far more complex. It's introducing new rights, the right to consent, the right to access, the right to portability, the right to modify, the right to be forgotten. So most complex new right is about portability, because that requires to classify your data. And it's not just PII data, it's also the consumption data, which should fit into the portability. Do you know the portability right? Who knows? Yeah, some. The portability right means that you should provide a means to your customers to ask you a file, and within that file you should provide all information that you have about your customer, including also his consumption data. Based on that data, your customers can give all that data to one of your competitors to ask a quote. That's a right for portability. So identifying within your own data base which one data is subject to the portability right is not just PII. Let's take an example. If I consume some data with my mobile phone, and I want to get all the phone calls that I have got, and I ask to my mobile provider to give me that file, that portable file, does it include the consumption data, including also all the numbers that I called? Yeah, but in fact, we are entering into the privacy in that case. Perhaps I am getting some calls with not my wife, not my company, and many other things like those. So there are some issues that we should decide and we should debate internally to see what is portable and what is not portable. And there will be continuous debate about that. So to do that, we need, in fact, to get the data governance stewardship, to understand where the data is, but to also show how much we support those rights, but also execute those rights into some of the execution platform like enterprise content management, data access, and data masking, which are some of the features that we should provide. Yes, in case of privacy, we should sometimes mask, or we should not get the access to all data. To allow that, we need a different type of information to supply, which is coming from data modeling, from enterprise architecture modeling, and also from the data discovery as well. And typically, Orbus is providing many of those features to provide support and get that execution right. So this is the type of things that enterprise architects are now building, which is in fact building what we call privacy management. We really think that GDPR is just the entry point to something which is bigger and more complex, as we want to deliver more value to customers, continuously more value to customers. That would require to get a more personalized interaction with the customers. That would require to enter into privacy management and not just address GDPR, but more globally to really manage, industrialize the privacy and the privacy management for your customers, involving also customers to say not just one consent to everything or not, but just decompose the type of service that you are offering and say, do you want that service, or do you want not to share that information which will allow me to provide you that service? So there is a sort of negotiation which should be the output. Oh. It's coming. Thank you. I was too long for that slide, sorry. So I want to go now to what is the next step. You have seen a lot of things already about the digital transformation. What we want to describe now is what is coming next. I will apply that to the transportation, and I know that you have Uber in Moscow. I checked before coming in fact, how the taxi system is working in Moscow. And in fact, I discovered that Uber is present, so that was good. So I did a study to check how much the business model of Uber compared to the taxi business model. You have seen that there is a lot of battle between those two business models, but also between Uber drivers and taxi drivers as well. In reality, when you take a look at from a value perspective, you discover that the personal travel care about three main values first. The first is safety. Okay, for safety, the government put in place, in fact, a license. And that's by purchasing a license that you are getting a safe driver. That's the first element. Second element is about honesty. So the taxi drivers has gotten a mapper into their taxi to get that honesty. In that case, you have no very different pricing and that sort of thing. And then, in fact, you have got another value asked by customers, which is, in fact, to get the taxi, the cab at the right time. It's solved by the radio. All of those draw to a monopolistic approach. All of those which are regulated by laws are now becoming bad. not the values, but in fact, Uber is also getting those values without a license, without a smart meter. You are just getting the code directly from the phone. The on time, we do not need anymore to rent a radio, which is very expensive. In some cities, I do not know in Moscow, but in Paris, for example, the taxi drivers are not getting any more money per month because they are paying license plus a smart meter plus a radio more than 10K per month, 10,000 euros per month. So all of those, because they are regulated by laws, are now becoming monopolistic and bad. And they can be replaced by something which is nearly free. Unfortunately regulated by Uber algorithms. Because that's Uber, which is depending on the demand and the offering, which is establishing the price by themselves. We think at first that the next Uber will be one which will allow customers and drivers to negotiate. If you have a 5-star as a customer and you are facing a 3-star driver, then you can say, you can offer me a price, and vice versa as well. So this is a very different approach. But what does that mean? That when Uber came, they came with new services, with new values, which was about politeness and better service with water and all that sort of thing. Something which has been, which disappeared from many taxi drivers. But what we are getting in addition is, in fact, there are also some community values which are coming, which is, in fact, I want now to be able, and that's a case in France, for example, I want to give a tip to the drivers to be sure that they are getting a social security and not just no retirement payment, no social benefits in that case. So you see what I mean. In fact, this demonstrates how much this is changing, and the world is completely changing to get some balance in terms of who is getting the right benefits, the right margin. This is the world that we are entering in. A world where the customers care more and more if your companies are paying taxes in their country. You are doing business with them. They want you to pay taxes correctly. They want you to avoid, in fact, bad investments. They want you to. So a lot of those values are coming more and more as part of the ecosystem. The beauty is coming from those applications that I am calling social computing 2.0. So Uber is one of those, which are telling you if you are consuming correctly or not, if you are consuming according to your values or not. This is the new world. This is the new world of those intermediaries which are telling you if you are getting the right service, the right product, according to your values. So we ask ourselves, should companies care about values? We think we are just at the beginning of that phenomena, frankly. So there is no urgency, but at the same time, we see big involvement about that. My colleague Anjali Lay published a very good document about that, which is establishing that 76,000 social mentions per month for brands, which increased from January 2016 to 175,000, just to show you how much it's improving. Be careful. Even if those numbers seem big, they are very low. But that's just showing how much that increase. We ask also, and we founded a panel of customers to ask them if they are considering values when they are consuming. So at the beginning of 2015, only 21% of the panel was considering the values when they were purchasing something. Now, in 2017, they are 52%. So yes, there is, again, some increase about that. And we asked also, we founded also a panel of enterprise to ask them, because we have some which are already engaged with values and some which are not engaged with values. But if we ask to companies which are engaged with values, what they expect seven times they expect to be more relevant to customers. 5 times they expect to be a top providers of products. 4 times expect to be even more profitable. This is a big change which is happening. This is the next big change, the next big idea for Forrester, which will accompany the digital transformation. We are getting some new research about that, and we are doing some experiments to test what is relevant to customers. It's very, very new. I have not a slide here, but now what I want to show you is how much that will change architecture, enterprise architecture into ecosystem architecture. So what does that mean? That means that, yes, we are still using TOGAF very much, and TOGAF appeared at the same time than Internet. The same way that we have seen some evolution previously from the mainframe type of framework, or the Zachman framework when the PC came, the personal computer came. But now that we are getting to smart computing, digital transformation, values transformation, we need probably to get the next generation of EA framework, which will take care about ecosystems, which will take care about operating models, which will care about architecture, business value, and meta framework. And I am proposing something which I called ecosystem architecture. This is that ecosystem architecture that I used to present you previously the Uber versus taxi analysis. What I did is, in fact, I used what are the values, the customers' values that customers care about. From that, I tried to identify where is coming the revenue, the risk, the capacity sharing, or the regulation, which we are driving, in fact, to transform some of those values into money. Okay? And then what I use is the orchestration model, which is to understand who was responsible of what. You remember, I told you that the government was responsible of the license, and they didn't manage correctly the license. And the society of taxi are managing the smart meters, or the meters, the same. So that's by understanding the responsibilities that you can understand also where is the good revenue sharing, which is not the case today. Again, Uber is trying to get the most of the revenue for themselves. Why? Because they are not getting enough money at the moment to open always new cities and all that sort of thing that they are investing in. So that's the typical approach that we are using to really build the ecosystem architecture by completing that with shared services, what we need to share in terms of data, in terms of services, and what we need also to share in terms of capacity. And again, that's where Uber also is investing a lot to open new cities. So that's all for me this morning.